Welcome to the Visionaries Only podcast presented by Energy 11 and hosted by me, Jay Thomas. And this is episode 6 with Janine Look. She's a solutions engineer at R3. She's also an ambassador and an influencer, even though she doesn't like the title influencer. So I'll say that she's incredibly influential in the tech community. And she started out in marketing and actually pivoted her career into engineering via Flatiron School, which is how we met. And what I love about the work Janine is doing is that she didn't just learn this new skill, go join a company, make a bunch of money and not do anything else. Like, she really decided that she was going to pour back into women that were coming up behind her, women that need support in the tech industry because they're obviously grossly underrepresented in the tech community. And even though there's so many of them doing some extraordinary work, I've been blessed to meet so many of them that sometimes it actually blows my mind when I hear the actual statistics. But I've met so many incredible women in the tech industry, or even people that aren't necessarily technical, but they're at like technical companies. I think that's maybe something that we don't necessarily shine a light on, is that you don't have to necessarily be the engineer at a tech company. But you're going to learn a lot about the work that she does to pour back into these women, specifically women of color as well. It's really inspiring. She's been featured at some big publications, I think most notably BBC. She's actually out in London. She lives out there. And you're going to hear about how she's been being honored from these different communities as well, because the work she's been doing is pretty undeniable. So I can't wait for you to hear the episode. I'm going to shut up and let you go. As always, please like and subscribe. That helps us out tremendously. This company is only going to grow. We really, really need your support. So please like and subscribe. If you're just listening to this on audio, please rate us. Please share with folks that you think are interested in this type of content. I've been surprised and really overwhelmed with some of the feedback that I've gotten on these episodes. They're not like, the numbers aren't blowing anyone out the water, but I've been really, really inspired by what people have been saying about the amazing visionaries that I've had on the show thus far. So please do like and subscribe. Rate us on the platform. Again, super, super, super helpful. And above all, please enjoy. So you work as a developer evangelist at R3.
Yes.
And I've heard this title a few times, but you describe the work as you work around decentralization, security, efficiency, and immutability. Can you, for a layman like me, can you break down A, what a developer evangelist does, and then B, your sort of like day-to-day work within this company?
Yeah, absolutely. So to be honest, as a developer evangelist, this role can vary depending on what company you work for, and also your team and your company's specific needs. But in my case, my role as a developer evangelist is basically being, still a software engineer. However, with the sense that on top of being a software engineer, I'm really focused on helping and enabling the acceleration of learning for developers within our community. So by community, I mean any developer that is interested in using our technology, for example, like Corda in our case, which is an enterprise blockchain platform. And so my role as a developer evangelist could encompass quite a few different things in order to enable that. So it could mean writing sample code to kind of showcase how to use our technology, or it could be going to conferences and giving talks, or doing technical demos and workshops, or even just to help developers out when it comes to debugging or any questions that they might have. So ultimately, it's really great for me as an individual, just because coming from a marketing background and then moving into software engineering, the role as a developer evangelist basically means I get to combine both marketing and software engineering skills together. So that's basically, on a nutshell, what my role encompasses. But in terms of the company itself, we work in the enterprise blockchain kind of, or distributed ledger technology kind of area. And to kind of break it down in a way that's quite easy to think about is, so think about today's society, right? We have a lot of centralized
Mm.
intermediaries, for example, banks, or any type of like marketplace whereby someone or some sort of organization is in charge of everything, basically. So if something was to
Mm-hmm.
break, then it would all come to a halt. And for example, if you and I wanted to transact with one another, we would rely on this centralized party to help us carry out that transaction. But when it comes to distributed
Right.
ledger technology, it is essentially a database of information that is stored
Mm-hmm.
amongst numerous amounts of computers around the world. And why is that something that is desirable or something that is exciting? Is because it just means that we're not as reliant on a centralized party, and we can take control of how we want to perhaps transact with one another. And overall, it also means that we take ownership of our data, or, for example, save money in certain cases because you don't have to pay a fee, for example, to a third party. So many, many different benefits depending on the use case. So, yeah.
I lo- no, that's great. And immediately the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about distributed ledger, I start thinking of cryptocurrency, right? Like
Right.
that's like one of the one of the largest, most, I guess, um, noticeable use cases for stuff like this. Um, as a developer evangelist, damn, that is a hard thing to say. Developer evangelist,
I know. So you
like
can also say
as a de-
DevRel, like developer relations. DevRel is like the short kind of term.
ah,
Hmm.
DevRel. Okay, I love that. So in your role as a DevRel,
Yeah,
are you still coding in this role? Are you doing
very
any
much so.
programming still?
Yeah, yeah, very much so,
Yeah.
actually. I would say majority of my time, if I'm not actually coding, I'm probably like reviewing code or updating any kind of samples and stuff like that. And ultimately, coding is a big passion of mine. So I don't think I would ever, I
Mm.
mean, never say never, but I would always want to keep coding. That's just something I love to do.
Yeah, you know the reason I ask you that is because I've spoken to some folks that have been coding for a while, and they've been telling me like they're looking for a way to get out of the day-to-day coding. So I thought that
Mm.
maybe the DevRel space was like a way for you to kind of get away from the day-to-day of coding every single day, you know?
Hmm. I mean, absolutely, in certain cases, because as I mentioned, developer relations covers so many different aspects. You can also work, for
Mhm.
example, as a technical writer within the DevRel team if you don't want to code. So it's definitely an option. It's up
Mhm.
to you really to choose what you want to do within DevRel for sure.
Gotcha. You and I have been on another podcast before, the Tech Perspective podcast that I
Hmm.
did with Flatiron School, and you talked really extensively about your past, and how you got into coding and stuff like that. So I don't want to necessarily like rehash all of that, but just like the quick and dirty version for folks. And I'll link the episode below in the bio, but for folks just to understand a little bit about your history, um, you were in marketing before, and then you pivoted to learn to code at Flatiron School, where you attended a software engineering course. I was working at Flatiron School. Just a quick idea for folks. on why you made that decision to go from marketing to coding, which you so eloquently said you love so much.
Yeah, to be honest, um, growing up, whenever I was in school, I was never that great at like STEM subjects. So STEM meaning science, technology, engineering, or maths. And naturally, I'm an
Yeah.
extrovert, so I really enjoy meeting people from, different countries and getting to know them. And so marketing
Mm.
was something that was really natural for me, and it was something that everyone around me kind of encouraged me to do. And it's what I ultimately did
Yeah.
a university degree on. But basically, what happened was whenever I graduated from uni, I did some like marketing internships, and I also had a job in marketing. And I felt like after a couple months of working in my role, I started to feel a little bit uninspired. And I felt like the work that I was doing was quite repetitive for me. So, the main factors
Yeah.
which inspired me to explore another career path was mainly curiosity, my desire to have a good work life balance, financial
Mm.
freedom, and also the urge to upskill myself. So I really wanted to see, how
Mm.
can I push myself a bit more and try something new? And I was working in
Mm.
e-marketing at the time, so I was,
Mm.
working on websites, and I did have very little, I guess, experience with HTML, but it did really spark an interest. So I decided on weeknights and on weekends to take on, a free online course to learn how to code. And eventually, my love for coding really grew a lot. And so I decided to save up enough money, quit my full time job in marketing to do the bootcamp course for software engineering at Flatiron School. That's basically how I got into software engineering.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And you took the role of Flatiron School. Oh, I'm sorry, the role of software engineer, and then your marketing skills, and you've really start to grow as an influencer in the tech space. And I'm curious, when did you start to make the decision to to move into that direction, to not just be an engineer, or maybe even just like a faceless engineer, right? You're now a public, uh, doing events type of engineer. When did you make that decision?
Well, actually, it mostly stemmed from whenever I first started off in the tech industry, and I felt like I didn't know anybody that I felt like I could relate to. None of my friends were studying tech or learning how to code, and I didn't really see that many, well, at the time, obviously, because I wasn't that familiar with the industry yet and the different types of tech social influencers. First of all, I also wouldn't consider myself as an influencer, but anyways, um, I think it was more because I didn't have that when I was starting my journey. So, and I realized
Mm.
how much it would mean to me to be, represented, and to feel like someone was
Mm.
similar to what I was doing. So that's why I started talking
Mm.
about my coding journey more online. And gradually it kind of grew, and people would message me asking for like advice or asking about my experience. And it initially
Mm.
started off from just wanting to help people, especially, women or people of color,
Mhm.
especially that because I felt like there was so little, there still is so little representation of,
Yeah.
these kind of individuals in STEM. And so that's what really made
Yep.
me feel like I needed to take the extra step to help them.
Interesting. So if do you not consider yourself an influencer, because that's like a title that's like reserved for like a certain space, or do you consider yourself just someone that's just documenting their story in order to help the masses?
Yeah, I think the reason why I wouldn't quite consider myself as an influencer, I don't know, maybe it's an imposter syndrome thing. I just feel like influencer sounds like
Mm.
very, oh, anything that I do, people will be influenced by it and like follow that. And I just feel like I'm just some
Gotcha.
ordinary individual doing it. I just feel like, yeah,
Hmm.
it feels weird to think of myself like that.
Well, I do think that the work you're doing and the work you will influence folks absolutely for the positive. And if you don't consider your influencer, you consider yourself an influencer now, I'm sure at some point, if you continue on the path you're going on, man, it's gonna be hard not to give you that title. I'm just saying, it's gonna be hard.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And coming from Flatiron School, where you learned how to code, to now becoming a Code First Girls ambassador. And just for context, Code First Girls helped over 80,000 women learn how to code for free, with over 55% of them from underrepresented ethnicities. Um, Working as an ambassador for a program like that has got to feel really full circle in a way. So, what do you attribute your success to in this space?
Yeah, wow. Um, I feel so excited and honored to be able to work with Code First Girls to that capacity because, if you asked me 5 years back, I wouldn't even think that it would have been possible. Um, to be
Yeah.
honest, throughout the journey, it's taken a lot of hard work, determination, keeping my head down, and really doing the best that I can. But I think more than that, um, being kind to people and like being
Mm,
able to support others as well as being open to receive support was something that was super important. And I think the the effects of having a great community and also being the person to kind of step up and volunteer for things really makes that
hmm.
opportunity possible. For example, initially with Code First Girls, the very first interaction I had with the team at Code First Girls was purely because one of my friends um, told me that she was taking a course with Code First Girls, and this was at the very beginning of my career in software engineering. So I was like first year working as a software engineer, and my friend told me, "Oh, hey, I'm doing this course for free with Code First Girls." And I thought to myself, wow, like, wouldn't
Hmm.
it be really cool if the company I was working at could also be behind this movement and sponsor Code First Girls and be a part of their partners if possible? And that was just a
Hmm.
very small light bulb that popped up in my head, and eventually having that idea to getting in touch with the right people to convincing the right people within the company to do that. And it eventually just snowballed into being able to help individuals get a job in software engineering and then advocating for what Code First
Yeah.
Girls do and then eventually becoming an ambassador. And I think all these things kind of builds up and accumulates over time. But definitely it is
Yeah.
really a full circle moment. And I wish when I was starting my coding journey, I knew about Code First Girls.
Yeah.
So for anyone who is interested and is listening to this podcast, um, definitely check out Code First Girls if you're interested in learning how to code because they're an amazing organization.
Nice. Yeah. You mentioned something in there about um, not being afraid to ask for help. And I've really been thinking about the the personality type you kind of have to be okay to constantly ask for help, like the self-awareness maybe that you have to do that. And I also think about how when I was working at Flatiron School, some folks would come in with a little bit of arrogance around their abilities to pick up coding or data science or whatever, and they get humbled very, very quickly within maybe the first couple weeks. For you coming in, was asking for help something you had to learn how to do, or was that instinctual?
I think it's something that definitely wasn't instinctual to start off with. But whenever I started the bootcamp course with Flatiron School, what really made me feel comfortable to ask for help is because of the environment, and maybe because of the individuals in my cohort, coincidentally, because the way of learning that we had was so open. And if you didn't know the answer to something, or if you didn't know why that was the answer or how to do something, we encouraged each other to speak up about it, so that not only could it help you as yourself, but it could also help maybe other people in the cohort too. And I think um, because I learned how to code initially on my own, and I didn't have any friends, as I mentioned, who did coding, or none of my, and I mean, like, none of my parents work in tech. So I really needed to know how to ask for help.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't really know how to move forward. And of course, at first it is difficult, but you just gotta keep going with it. And eventually you realize that the impact of it is so much bigger than the fear of asking for help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Uh, I always say that tech, maybe maybe anything in STEM, honestly, and then like things like law, like architecture, those things will humble you. Those things that are really hard to do, you come in there with some arrogance, that thing will humble you. Okay. um, Also, you were, I mean, the accolades continue. You were nominated for a social impact award for your dedication to closing the gender gap. What went through your mind when that nomination came through?
Oh my word. I was terrified. um,
Really? How come?
well, actually, for that specific award, I was
Mhm.
really surprised because I joined my company R3 in July last year, so July 2022. And two of my colleagues told me in September, I think, or October, something like that, that they nominated me for the award. And I just felt so surprised because having joined the company only in July, um, I never would have thought they would notice anything that I do, and never mind nominate me for an award. And what made me feel so grateful as well is because sometimes when you're trying to make change, you can come across a lot of resistance. People telling you, oh, that's just so annoying. Why are you trying to make noise? Why are you trying to change what is working so far? And it can feel really isolating because you feel like you're trying to move against the current. Um, and to be able to hear my peers and my colleagues telling me that, hey, actually, what you're doing is really important and it's making a difference. Really, I wanted to cry, and it was in the office as well. So I was just like, I need a moment. I'm going to be right back. But yeah, it inspired me to want to do more. It motivated me to push myself more. And throughout the whole process of meeting the panel of judges, and also all the other incredible women who were also nominated for the many different awards, it made me feel so inspired because, I looked at all the other incredible ideas that other individuals have to make change, and it makes me think about, wow,
Mm,
like, what if I collaborated with them and we can have a bigger impact together? So many ideas. So
yeah.
yeah, so happy about that.
Wow. You know that well, two things come to mind when you say that. One, I think it verifies that you're working in the right place for them to acknowledge your work
Mhm.
and nominate you for that. And
Mhm.
then number two, one thing that maybe and you could tell me if I'm wrong, but the way that I see the way that you work is you put your head down, do things that are impactful, and then when you look up, things like this happen where you get nominated for an award. You're like, I wasn't even looking for that. I was just
Mhm.
trying to do the work. Is that an
Right.
accurate description?
I think
Yeah.
it is because what actually means the most to me is the result. Like, of course, winning awards is or getting nominated for awards is amazing, but I think what is even more
Yeah.
amazing is being able to see people that you help or give advice to like grow so much and see them flourish and actually see them attain what they set their goals to be, because that was once me, and obviously I still set goals for myself now, but looking back, without my mentors, without my peers throughout my whole career in tech, without supportive managers who would stick up for me, I wouldn't be here. And so to be able to be that person for someone else, I just know how much impact it had on me. And therefore, every
Mm,
time I'm able to do that, it makes my heart feel so fulfilled. And it means way more than any award can mean to
yeah.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get that. I get that. And I think that's what allows you to have the success is that you're focused on the end results, and then you let sort of the anyone kind of watching handle any of like the award stuff or nominations um, or accolades at all. Um, in the you did a business article with the BBC. Um, congrats on that. That was huge to be featured in there. Yeah, I was going through your stuff. I'm like, man, you've done a lot. Um, so you mentioned in that article the use of artificial intelligence, specifically Copilot, which is powered by GPT-3,
Hmm.
not to be confused with Chat GPT, which
Hmm.
is a variant of the GPT model, which was designed for chatbot applications and is somewhat less powerful. But you mentioned that things like Copilot can be helpful when programming, um, and you mentioned it takes out some of the boring parts of coding. But
Hmm.
when you think about it, maybe like zooming out just a little bit, when you think about where technology is heading, in your opinion, what do you think future engineers, people maybe in college or maybe like right about to enter college and uh and start their journey in coding, what do you think some of these future engineers should be considering as they think about the future of their industry with disruptive things like artificial intelligence?
Hmm. I think something that is super, super important, but it's definitely not highlighted enough because of the growth and the amount of the velocity in expansion. I think the most important thing that needs to be evaluated about is the ethics of using these sort of technologies and the impact it can
Mm,
have in terms of biases and all that kind of stuff, because obviously it's incredible that we're able to use these technologies to help us and to kind of be an extension of what we're able to do at the moment. If anything, it makes working a lot less time costly, and it definitely can help us in terms of correcting certain things that we might do. However, I think it's really important to still remember that all these models take in data sets that are currently already existing out in the internet. And if you think about it, the data is not 100% representative and it's not fair. Like, this is something that is known and it's a difficult problem to solve
hmm
for sure. But then if you think about,
Yeah.
for example, giving credits to the artists or the writers or the creators of these kind of whatever it can be, like uh, published articles or artwork or code,
Yeah.
um, and thinking about who actually creates these things, and do they really represent
Mm.
us individuals as a whole? Will this exacerbate the
Right.
problem with underrepresented individuals in STEM? You know, for example, when it comes to Face ID, like face recognition technology, there is a massive issue at the very beginning of it when, you know, underrepresented individuals were really negatively affected by it purely because the images
Hmm.
used for the data set was biased or were biased.
Right.
So I
Right.
think it's
Hmm.
great, and I'm excited to see where it can take us. But I think we shouldn't forget about the ethical side of things and how to protect people, because after all, if you know this kind of technology where it's like, for example, let's say augmented reality or virtual reality. I
Hmm.
think these things are great. And of course, it can potentially help out in terms of including more individuals or when it comes to accessibility kind of aspects. But I think we definitely
Yeah.
need to make sure that we're not making vulnerable individuals more vulnerable, you know, protecting,
Yeah.
for example, young people, all
Right.
that kind of stuff, I think is something that is a bit making me a little bit nervous. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you. I don't know if you ever seen the movie Ex Machina. You know that movie?
Yes. Yes.
So I recently saw it this year. I know I'm late,
So
but I saw it. At, it's so good.
good.
I recently saw Ex Machina, and I watched. I mean, it's to watch Ex Machina around the time that Chat GPT comes out, and everyone is like, "This is going to destroy the world. This is the end of society. How will students be able to learn and like how could you verify that they actually did their homework, all
Hmm.
of this stuff. I will tell you, it has put me in a little bit of a paranoia. And I think the ethics part that you brought up, I actually spoke on the old podcast about that with someone. um I'm blanking on the name, but she was like an AI expert, and she was talking
Wow.
about exactly what you're talking about, the ethics.
Yeah.
And I we talked about how the data sets are already, like, if an AI ingested a lot of the information that's given that we have at our disposal right now, there could be a lot of catastrophic issues if there isn't like true policing and laws around it. But the
Mhm.
thing, I always take it like just a step further, because watching Ex Machina, I'm like, this feels like a this feels like this could actually happen. And maybe
Mhm.
I'm a little, I'm catastrophizing the situation a little bit. But I don't know. Watching Machina mixed with Chat GPT, I'm like, huh, why wouldn't a robot take advantage of us and play on our emotions and completely take advantage of us? Why wouldn't this happen? Do you think about like this, like these crazy, end of the world scenarios?
I mean, sci-fi is one of my favorite genres when it comes to movies and books, but I would say we're still quite far from robots taking over the world. I hope. I feel like because a lot of the data and the learning models are still being corrected, you know, by humans, and it takes a lot of data to kind of be able to train a specific model. It takes so much energy, so many hours, and obviously I am no AI expert. Like I don't work in AI. I've never studied AI, so I would never, or machine learning even.
Yeah.
And so I can only say
Mm-hmm.
that I think it will take quite a bit more time, and instead of worrying about it, we can somewhat adapt to it. If you think about it, like, for example, the internet, that was something that
Mm-hmm.
everyone was like, that's so stupid. Why would anyone want to use the internet? You know, when it first came out, no one was on the internet. So why would you pay so
Mm-hmm.
much money just to get online, right? And then it became a mass movement eventually, and everyone got online. And it's kind of like that. I feel like with technology, you can't prevent it from happening. It's going to happen. It's going to develop. It's going to change. I mean, some people thought virtual reality was really scary, right? But if you think about it, as long
Yeah.
as the good people outweigh the bad people, I don't know. I guess I'm too into like
Yeah.
heroic movies, but we have the ability to like change it, develop it, adapt it to what we feel like we need it for. Ultimately,
Yeah.
technology is built to help us as individuals and um, further what we do. And so I feel like as long as majority of people are using it for the right reasons, let's hope it'll continue to stay harmless. But even
Yeah.
with technology today, like so many people are negatively affected by it. Look at social media, right? Like there's so many good sides to it, but
Right.
subconsciously our attention span has decreased greatly, and there's so much like abuse that happens online, like all these kind of problems that we never even thought
Yeah.
could have been possible. So who's to say that
Yeah.
robots won't take over one day? But, you can't worry twice.
Hope. Yeah. Well, I hope I'm long gone if the robots do take over. Hopefully, I'm long gone by that point.
Maybe you'll be immortal
Um,
by
the Oh my goodness, that would be
then.
crazy. That would be crazy. I So two things. I have a theory, and I also have like the thing that keeps me comfort about this whole robot AI invasion, because I'm never gonna get off of this hill. The the one thing that I feel good about that gives me a little bit of comfort is that uh, electronics will always be, well, hopefully always be destroyed by water. That's my goal. Is like that these AI robots, if push comes to shove, we can throw water on them. They malfunction like if your iPhone got thrown into the river.
But
Like
iPhones are waterproof
that's my
now.
like yeah, but I think we gotta like that's true. So a little bit of water isn't gonna do it. Like you gotta like really drown them. Like you gotta put them on a yacht and just sink the yacht, like the Titanic. You know what I'm saying? Like it gotta go all the way to the bottom of the sea. But then again, they might be so smart they'll like develop like a colony underneath the water. Um, but my theory though, I think is like super real, and I want to test it against you. Tell me what you think. I'm now thinking about this in real time, so there might be some holes.
Go
uh,
for it. Take your
my
time.
theory is my yeah, my theory is that with augmented reality and virtual reality, they'll eventually start to become more and more popular, and it'll start with entertainment. Then it's going to start with helping folks. Maybe it's like helping you learn. Then it's going to eventually start to permeate throughout society, like almost like the internet, right? Where it just starts to slowly expand the use cases for these different versions of reality. And I think just like social media, where it starts out good and then just kind of like falls off a cliff because of the just like um, negative aspects of it, used for nefarious reasons, people bullying, people uh, committing cyber crimes and things of that nature. I think the virtual reality and augmented reality will get to a point where people won't be able to discern the difference between reality and augmented or virtual reality.
Hmm.
And I think some folks will actually get it'll like the technology will be so good that it'll be hard to discern the truth, kind of like how we've gotten better graphics with video games and stuff like that. And I think there's going to be a mental health movement around helping people discern the difference, because I think of like the craziest version of it is like, you ever put on those glasses? I forgot they're made by Meta. I think they're called
Oculus?
Quest. Uh,
Hmm.
the Oculus, not Quest.
Hmm.
So you put those on, and it's a 360 view of an entire world. Like if you feel like you're in a roller coaster, you feel like you literally feel like you're in a roller coaster when you're in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there may be a version of that that's really dangerous where people won't be able to discern, wait, am I in the virtual world or am I in the real world? And there's going to be a whole movement on the mental health side to help people with affected by that. What do you think of my theory?
I mean, have you seen the latest movie with Harry Styles in it? It's called Don't Worry, Darling, I think. I hope I didn't get the movie wrong because all the
No.
Harry Styles fans will be coming for me. But I don't want to ruin the plot, but it's about the whole concept that you just talked about, where, to start off the story,
Oh.
the oh gosh, I think I'm gonna put out spoilers, so I'm gonna stop there. But it is related to that side of things where virtual reality becomes so real, it becomes so realistic that when you're in it, you think that is the
Hmm.
reality, and you don't feel like your actual reality is real. It almost feels like a dream. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think to a certain extent, um, I think that might happen one day, and it's very likely that it will because of all the problems that are happening in our society at the moment, in our world. And I think it might be easier for people to have that escape, you know, even if it's watching Netflix,
Right.
even if it's the very tiniest amount of entertainment. Like, we do it because we want to de-stress, we want to not think about maybe a long day at work, right? And that can potentially
Right.
extend to living a second life in a different world where you're this crazy, beautiful, heroic character, where everyone like, oh my gosh, amazing,
Hmm.
that kind of vibe where it kind of, you feel like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
your alter ego in that world.
Right.
Um, yeah, it's quite scary. It's quite sad,
I mean,
actually.
right. It would be another version of escapism because listen, if you told me that I could put on some glasses or something like that and I could be teleported into the Dragon Ball Z universe and I'm fighting alongside Goku, I'm
Yes,
gonna do it.
yes.
Like what? You, you know, but at some point I'm gonna have to know that, energy beams don't flow from my hands.
Right.
And at least I hope when technology gets to that point, I'm hoping that majority of people will be able to discern between reality and augmented worlds. Um, but thank you for humoring me on that. I did want to jump back to your career because there's something I'm fascinated by. I'm fascinated by the work that you're doing, plus the sort of like these milestones and accolades that you're receiving. And I know that we mentioned earlier that you're not doing it for the awards, you're doing it for the impact.
Mhm.
Um, but you've been featured in BBC Business News, as we mentioned, nominated for awards, ranked the top 10 engineer, and obviously tapped as an ambassador for Girl Code. You've spoken on panels at events, and all in all, you've done a really great job at branding yourself as an upcoming authority in this space. We won't say influencer. Let's just say like an upcoming um, person to know in this space. Um, I'm curious. I know some of them are people reaching out and stuff like that, but for somebody maybe coming up, um, how are you finding these opportunities to be seen and to be recognized in this way? And if somebody wants to sort of take on a similar path, what are some of the things that you might impart on them and suggest that they do?
Mhm. So I would say the first thing is, first, if someone wants to maybe expand their opportunities and be recognized in a way that is seen as, I guess, like doing extra work, being recognized for putting in more. I think what I noticed during my career is you really have to maybe sometimes push against the current, as I said. And I remember at one Women in Tech event, there was someone who asked a question related to, as an underrepresented individual in STEM, what should we do if we don't want to stand out and, have that kind of perception that we're trying to cause drama and trying to disrupt what's currently happening. But the honest truth is, if you want things to change, even if it's not for you, even if it's for the next generation or the next generation or whatever, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, if you want that change to happen, you're gonna have to make some people uncomfortable, to be really honest. Otherwise, they're not gonna want to change. And I think, as I said, it can feel really isolating. And that's why having that community is so important. Like, whenever I first started, for example, setting up the Women at a Vast Employee Resource Group, for example, or whenever I first started doing like panel discussions or talks at different types of conferences, I was alone. I prepared lots of talks on my own. I only had my sister to practice with. But whenever I really found my community, whenever I decided, you know what, like, ego is so stupid, and just go reach out to that person if you want to hear about their opinion. And, even if you don't feel confident to, like, take the first initiative to introduce yourself to people who you feel like you want to be, acquainted to and get familiar with. And it actually can change your mindset. And it definitely changed mine. I felt like at the very beginning that I was fighting against all these social injustices and gender equality, inequality stuff, like, on my own. Like, I felt like, oh, it's so unfair. I feel so alone. But once you just reach out, once you just, you know, take the first step, you realize that there's so many other individuals who are also behind the same movement. And sometimes all it takes is just to actually look, right? And so I would say, if you're someone who wants to have these opportunities to be an ambassador for an amazing organization or be featured in a famous newspaper, then take the first step. Like, talk about things that you're doing on your social media, for example, or reach out to someone who's senior in your company or in your team and ask them, how can you help? Volunteer yourself. Like, I mean, because the thing is, everyone is so focused on themselves that if you want these opportunities, you're going to have to make people notice you, right? You're going to have to, hey, I'm here because I want to do X, Y, and Z, and say, I'm present, I'm dedicated to help, and this is how I can help. So I think that is kind of what got me to where I am now. And from meeting so many other amazing individuals, like from the past 5 years working in tech, I learned so much along the way, and I'm still learning. Like, I still get things wrong, right? It's so normal. But I think it's willing to just suck it up, say it's okay. Like, we all make mistakes and we're all learning, but how can we do better tomorrow? That kind of got me where I am here. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Putting yourself out there, having the bravery to do it. Not even bravery. Maybe it's just courage, right? It's moving despite feeling scared. I love it. And I think the mindset that you have of just putting your head down, doing the work, and things will fall into place, is absolutely, why you are where you are. Janine, thank you so much. I just have one last question. It's the same question I asked you when we ended the podcast last time.
Ooh.
I took it from the old podcast because shoot, it was my thing. I'm gonna bring it over here. It is, Janine, what is a quote that you personally live by?
Gosh, from the top of my mind, it's really hard to think of one. I actually also wanted to add onto what I said now. I feel like maybe I didn't quite extend that enough, but basically what I also want to add is, of course, keep your head down and stay focused. But one thing that I do is I make a journal on a weekly basis of like, what have I achieved this week? So that when it comes to
Mm,
performance reviews, when it comes to end of years, when it comes to someone senior asking you, hey, what are you up to? You know exactly what you've done and you don't lose credit for things that you've done. And I think
mm,
there's so many occasions where I know people around me who say, oh, it's my end of year review. I feel so nervous. I don't know what to say. Or I want to negotiate a higher salary, but I don't know what I can say to convince them to do so. And I think by making a note of your weekly achievements, monthly achievements, even if they seem small at the time, make a note of it. And at the end of the month, at the end of the year, when it comes to those, talks, you can have a look through what you've done. And it makes it so much easier. But back to your question on the quote. um,
that no, that's such a great point, though. That was an excellent point. Thank you for adding that.
Thank you. To your quote. And gosh, I'm going to have to paraphrase because I don't remember exactly the quote, but this is actually
Go for
by
it.
an influencer on social media called Chrissy Chella. And she actually is, I guess, she's an entrepreneur and also a fitness
Mm,
influencer. And she once said, this is more related to working out in her case, but I think it's applicable to anything that
mm,
we want to stay committed to. And she says that, well, she doesn't say exactly, but as I said, I'm going to paraphrase. Motivation is not something that comes naturally on a daily basis for everyone. And to be honest with you, majority of the people might not feel motivated to do something every single day. But what actually yields results is being committed, being dedicated, even if you can't find motivation. Having that base level that you set yourself, having those, every day I want to make sure, for example, I work out for 30 minutes or at least move my body for 30 minutes. Every day I want to make sure I at least learn something new in coding for an hour. Setting that baseline for yourself and making sure whether you feel motivated to do that or not, you just got to do it
yeah.
is what ultimately will build that commitment, that discipline. That paraphrase was so long. I'm sure she said that in like one sentence. but but I will find that and send it to you and then you can link it somewhere. Um, but yeah, and that really changed me because it changed my mindset because I thought, oh my gosh, like she has so much commitment and she works out on a regular basis. Of course, she takes breaks from time to time. Everyone has to have breaks, right? But wow, how does she stay
Right.
so consistent over years? Like I always try to work
Yeah.
out, and then after a couple of months, I'm like, meh, I don't know. But whenever I heard her say like she works out even when she feels so demotivated to do that, um, I think it made me really realize like sometimes you don't want to do certain things. Okay, I'm not. Obviously, this is on a case to case basis, very subjective and
Right.
based
Right.
on
Right.
personal interpretation. But I just feel like there are times
Right.
when
Right.
for work or for like certain things, I need to be committed. I need to deliver, and I might not feel like doing that, but it's what you do on a daily basis. What you promise yourself that you want to do is what will ultimately lead you to achieving the goals that you want to achieve.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a long paraphrase, but a good one nonetheless.
Sorry.
Thank you for the. No, it was good. It was very, very good, very solid, and I love how you explained it as well. Uh, Janine, thank you so much. Um, this has been fantastic. I'm gonna link all of your stuff where they can reach you below,
Oops, sorry.
and and with that, we are out.